पहली बार मैं ऐसे ऑफिस में आई हूँ फॉर्म भरने के लिए पॉलिटिक्स के उसमें, तो मेरे लिए नई चीज थी, एक्साइटेड हो रही हूँ। अभी मुझे पता लग रहा है कि हाँ लड़ाई स्टार्ट हो गई है, तो उस मोड में मैं चली गई हूँ बिल्कुल। और मैं चाहती हूँ कि जी जान से मेहनत करूँ, लोगों का जो विश्वास है, जो प्यार है, उनकी भावनाओं की कदर करते हुए मैं हर एक वो काम करूं जो वो चाहते हैं, मेरे से उम्मीद करते हैं। हम यहाँ से सीट जीतकर अगर हम जाएंगे तो सबकी मेहनत सफल होगी। हम पार्टी के लिए एक मजबूती को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए हमारा योगदान रहेगा। जीन जिले का जुलाना जिले का योगदान रहेगा। बहुत जिम्मेदारियां हैं। दीपेंद्र भाई साहब ने बहुत जिम्मेदारी के साथ मुझे यहाँ भेजा है, बहुत उम्मीदों के साथ में भेजा है। भूपेंद्र हुड्डा सर ने बहुत एक आश्वासन मेरे को दिया है और एक विश्वास भी दिखाया है कि हमें आप पे भरोसा है, आप अच्छा करोगे। और मेरे को इस फील्ड में भेजा है तो कुछ सोच के ही भेजा होगा, और मैं चाहती हूँ कि सबकी उम्मीदों पे मैं खरा उतरूँ बस।
My apologies there for the big breaking news that just came in of Vinesh Phogat filing her nomination. And we spoke to her exclusively on India Today, where she speaks about her political journey. There's a controversy that's playing out also over what Vinesh Phogat has been saying and speaking about really what played out in the Olympics. Let's get you some of the comments that Vinesh Phogat has said now that she's spoken out about what happened in Paris. First, in fact, Vinesh Phogat says that it was a friend who told me about the system of going to the court of arbitration, not Indian authorities. So I went knowing my own right and decided to appeal. The Indian authorities didn't help me. Besides that, Vinesh Phogat also said that I would have won gold if the case was fought better. This is another comment that she said, essentially highlighting, saying that the government didn't do enough. The centre and sports bodies treated it as Vinesh's medal and not India's medal. So this is a grave allegation that she's making, saying nobody fought, saying that this is glory for India. They thought of it as glory for Vinesh alone. I didn't get support in Paris from Indian authorities. So directly, she's pinning the blame on the government, saying nothing was done to help her. And she's even referred to the picture that was clicked by PT Usha when she met her the next day in hospital, saying the picture was clicked with me for posturing. I wasn't even told, my consent wasn't taken for the photo to be taken or for it to be put on social media. So all of these claims have been made by Vinesh Phogat. Our sports editor Nikhil Nas, remember, was reporting from Paris during the Olympics, and he was covering this entire incident live when, of course, the disqualification had taken place, when it was moved to court, and the arguments that had taken place in court as well. So he tells you exactly what was the truth of how the disqualification played out and whether Vinesh is right when she says the government didn't help her at all.
What are those claims that she's making right now, and how much there is falsehood in that and how much of truth there is in that? We'll try and look at closely. What's the first claim that she's making? She said in one of her interviews now that a friend told her about her recourse, a legal recourse of approaching the Court of Arbitration for Sports, CAS, and it wasn't the Indian authorities. To that count, I must say that what she's claiming is right. So if you remember, that entire scenario happened, and it was Vinesh Phogat herself that approached CAS as an athlete. And if you remember, there were 4 lawyers that were appointed by the Paris Olympic authorities that were there for all athletes. They were actually fighting the case for her. So if there is any sort of confusion, as in Indian government or Indian Olympic Association or Sports Authority of India, they actually said no, we must fight for Vinesh Phogat, that there was no truth to it. That is exactly what we've been reporting. And if she claims that a friend told her about it and she on her own accord approached the authorities, that is correct. Nothing wrong in that. However, there is a catch in that. I must tell you, that does not mean that the Indian authorities weren't with her all throughout. They had to back her as well. You needed the Indian Olympic Association also to back her. And the initial appeal that she sent, even though she decided to take the legal recourse, it was also signed by the Indian Olympic Association. So they were backing her in all of this. So this claim made by Vinesh now in her interviews is partly correct. Okay, what's the next claim that she's making? She's saying if the case was fought better, she would have been awarded that medal. That's the other claim that she has, and I think nothing could be further away from the truth. I think everything that you did it, and if you read that verdict very closely, which I have, the 15-page verdict that came, it is pretty clear that no matter how you fought the case, no matter what you did, no matter who you had as legal people fighting, the result would have been pretty much the same, because there is no past precedent. There's never been a case where CAS has overturned a verdict if the rules have been followed. Yes, if there were loopholes in the rules, or if something that the rule book had not addressed, or if the rules were not followed, if there was something like that, then she would have got some sort of relief. But there have been no cases in the past where the rules have been followed and the decision has been overturned. So for Vinesh to now say that if the case was fought better, medal would have been awarded, is a complete hogwash. The four lawyers that were fighting on our behalf obviously gave it their best. You had the smartest minds that work in a legal entity called Krida Legal, that work in sport, led by Vidushpat Singhania, one of the finest brains in when it comes to cases related to sports. All of them work towards this. Harish Salve, he needs no introduction, a legal eagle that you have. All of them fought this case. So there was no other way that you could have fought this case better, as she claimed. I think everything was done in terms of fighting that case, just that there were rules, she was on the wrong side of the rules, and the verdict came as was being expected. In fact, the fact that they took more than that 24-hour deadline, which they seldom do, CAS, and pushed it to 3-4 days, just tells you that the legal fight was good. It at least forced the court to look at it very closely, scrutinize it even more closely. Eventually, there was no way out for Vinesh. So this claim of her is completely wrong in the interviews that she's giving right now. Third and the final claim that she's making in her interviews now, after having joined a political party, she says government and sporting bodies made it an ego issue and treated it as Vinesh's medal and not India's medal. So somewhere she's saying that, because it was Vinesh, if it was some other athlete, they would have been supporting her or fighting for her and ensuring that she wins a medal. It's because I was Vinesh, because I took on the government, they treated me differently. Again, nothing could be further away from the truth. I was there in Paris, followed this case very closely. I saw all that went into behind the scenes. I must tell you also, and kudos to, it's not a lot of times that we praise administrators. More often than not, we journalists are always nitpicking and sometimes scrutinizing their their acts or their decisions. But in this case, I must tell you that all the backing that she needed, she was given. Even though she had her 4 lawyers that she had picked herself, I know this for a fact that the Indian Olympic Association, Sports Authority of India, as well as a few prominent people from the government were all putting their heads together, and that's how you had Vidushpat Singhania from Krida Legal and Harish Salve also come into the case to make Vinesh's case stronger. I don't think there was anybody in this country, whether they were from the ruling party, whether they were from the sporting bodies, that were against Vinesh Phogat. In fact, everyone was very empathetic towards her. Everyone was ensuring that she's looked after. I'll tell you, as a media man, there were a lot of people that I spoke to who could have given us access to Vinesh to speak to her, but they were all safeguarding her, saying, no, leave her alone, she needs to be looked after. I gave you an example of Chef de Mission spending close to 2 days with her and treating her as a top level athlete and an Indian athlete. So I think everyone that was present there, even though I must tell you, Vinesh took a few decisions unilaterally. She did not involve Indian Olympic Association. She did not involve the Sports Authority of India. But everyone that I could think of tried to back her, tried to help her out. Unfortunately, the case was such that there was no way that she was going to win it. So these are her latest claims. We just showed you, and we tried to, again, as we did earlier as well, tried to separate fact from fiction, and we've attempted at doing that for the second time.
So you heard from Nikhil their first-hand account of what exactly transpired in Paris and why some of the claims by Vinesh simply don't add up, including the question of how some of the senior-most lawyers were deployed there if it was just Vinesh fighting individually for that medal, fighting that particular case. And the question then will be asked about whether this was a politically coloured comment made by Vinesh. In light that she's now joined the Congress, is she therefore forced to take on the government, even on an issue, unfortunately, like her disqualification at the Olympics?